The Great Forum of the Galactic Council was a masterpiece of alien architecture, a vast, circular space where 1,000 species could gather. Today, it was packed. News of the Sol incident had spread like a shockwave. The story was unbelievable. A lost Kelthari fleet attacks a human ship and is then surgically dismantled by a hidden human armada no one knew existed. The representatives buzzed with a mix of fear, anger, and desperate curiosity. At the center of the main platform, the Terran ambassador, the same one who had begged Earth for help, stood tall, his gray skin flushed with triumph. Next to him, the Kelthari ambassador looked sickly, his usually vibrant green skin pale. They had been arguing for an hour, trading accusations of treachery and violations of galactic law. Then, the main doors opened. A hush fell over the chamber. 3 humans walked in. They were not dressed in military uniforms, but in simple, dark suits. They moved with a quiet confidence that needed no fanfare. At their head was Jinwoo, the astrophysicist from Lunar Relay. On one side was Mira, her data slate in hand. On the other was Captain De Hyan, his posture straight, his face an unreadable mask. They did not go to the petitioner's podium. They walked directly to the central platform, a space reserved for major powers. The Terran ambassador spluttered in protest, but a look from the head counselor, a being of shifting light, silenced him. The humans had requested this time, and given what had happened, no one was going to deny them. Jinwoo stood before the microphone. He did not smile. He did not bow. He simply began to speak, his voice calm and amplified through the chamber. Members of the Galactic Council. 72 hours ago, the Kelthari Union vessel Prophet's Blade fired an unprovoked shot on the Earth Defense Force ship, steadfast in sovereign human space. This is the sensor log from that event. He nodded to Myra. She tapped her slate. Above the platform, a hologram bloomed to life. Every delegate watched, in perfect silence, the same footage Jinwoo had seen. The damaged Kelthari ships. The Steadfast approaching. The sudden, vicious blast of plasma. The explosion on the human ship's side. It was undeniable. The Steadfast was on a peaceful patrol, Jinwoo continued. Its shields were raised in a standard defensive posture. Its weapons were offline. Captain Daehyun's first action was to hail the damaged vessels and offer assistance. The response was a particle beam to the engine. He let the image hang there. The wounded Steadfast drifting. For generations, Jinwoo said, his voice growing slightly harder, Earth's policy was one of non-intervention. We cultivated our own world. We asked nothing of you. In return, we asked only that our space be respected. You mistook our choice for weakness. You saw our garden and thought it was undefended land. Now, he nodded to Captain Daehyun. The captain stepped forward. He did not speak. He simply entered a command on a small device. A new hologram replaced the first dot. It was a recording from the Sentinel ships. The council watched, in horrified fascination, as the gray human fleet appeared. They watched the precise, surgical beams of light. They saw the Kelthari weapons shorn away, their engines silenced, their comms cut. They saw it happen with no explosions to the main hulls, no life pods fleeing. It was a clinical, terrifying display of controlled power. When it ended, the silence in the forum was absolute. The Kelthari ambassador had sunk into his seat. The Terran ambassador was staring, his triumphant sneer gone. Jinwoo took the microphone again. The Kelthari crews are alive. Their ships, disarmed, were towed to the edge of our space and released. We provided them with the means to call for help. We have ended no lives. He paused, looking slowly around the vast chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. But the age of our non-intervention is over. You fired the first shot. You brought the war to us. So now we set the terms of the peace. He took a breath. The next words were not his. They were the words of the Earth Council, and he delivered them with cold, final clarity. Effective immediately, a neutral zone of 10 light-years radius around the Sol system is declared. Any military vessel entering this zone without prior human authorization will be met with immediate and permanent disarmament. A murmur ran through the crowd. 10 light-years was a huge slice of space. Second, Jinwoo continued, his voice cutting through the noise. The conflict between the Terran Dominion and the Kelthara Union in the Benexus sector has destabilized our galactic neighborhood and directly led to this crisis. You will cease all hostilities there within 72 standard hours. A full ceasefire verified by our observers. Now the murmurs became shouts of protest. The Terran ambassador jumped to his feet. You cannot dictate terms to sovereign states. This is an outrage. Jinwoo did not raise his voice. He simply waited for the uproar to die down. Then he said, "We are not dictating terms for your war. We are dictating terms for our peace. If the fighting in Benexus does not stop in 72 hours, we will stop it. We will disarm every ship in that sector from both sides, and we will tow the wrecks to your respective homeworlds. You have seen that we can do this." The sheer, quiet certainty in his voice was more frightening than any shout. The Terran ambassador sat down heavily. "We are not warriors," Jinwoo said, his tone softening just a fraction, but losing none of its strength. "We are gardeners. But a gardener must prune a diseased branch to save the tree, and he must build a strong fence to keep the wolves out. Consider this your pruning. Consider the neutral zone your fence. Do not test its strength." He stepped back. The message was delivered. There were no questions, no debates invited. The three humans turned and walked back toward the great doors. The same way they came out as they walked, Captain Daehyun allowed himself a single, small glance at the stunned, silent forum. He saw fear. He saw respect. He saw the old order crumbling. He felt no joy in it, only a heavy sense of duty. The doors closed behind them, shutting off the rising wave of frantic chatter. Weeks later, Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Steadfast. His ship was repaired, the scar on its hull now a smooth patch of new metal, a reminder. He was on patrol again, but the patrol was different now. His ship was no longer alone. Flanking him, at a respectful distance, were two of the gray Sentinel vessels. They were his shadow, his promise made real. On his screen, the Benexus sector was quiet. The ceasefire, against all odds, was holding. The threat had been believed. Jinwoo's voice came over the com from Lunar Relay, now a much busier command center. "All quiet on the frontier, Captain." "All quiet here, too," Daehyun replied. He looked out the main viewport. Earth was a distant blue gem. The stars were calm. The silence had returned. But it was a different silence now. It was not the quiet of a people hiding, hoping not to be noticed. It was the quiet of a people who had spoken, and who had been heard. It was the quiet of a garden, peacefully growing behind a fence that everyone now knew was made of unbreakable steel. The war had come to their door, and they had ended it with a single simple lesson. They were still gardeners. But the galaxy would never look at a gardener the same. The silence on the bridge of the Prophet's Blade was now a thick, choking thing. Commander Rail stared at his tactical screen, the last traces of his battle fury draining away, replaced by a dawning, horrifying understanding. The ship he had fired upon was not a Terran scout. It was human, and it was not fighting back. It was just... Watching him dot his communications officer, his voice weak, broke the silence. "Commander, we are being hailed." From the human ship, again. "Put it through," Rail said, the word barely a whisper. The face that appeared on the screen was the human captain. He looked calm, too calm. Behind him, Rael could see smoke and damaged panels, the evidence of his own shot. The human's uniform was torn at the shoulder. "Kelthari vessel," the human said. His voice was flat, with no anger, no fear. It was the most unsettling thing Rael had ever heard. "This is Captain De Hyan of the Earth Defense Force. You have fired upon a neutral ship in sovereign human space. You will power down your weapons and engines immediately. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." Rael's mind raced. Boarded? Inspection? This was a mistake. A terrible mistake. He could explain. He could offer payment, reparations. The humans were traitors of a sort, were they not? Everything had a price. "Captain, 1,000 apologies. A malfunction. My ship was damaged. We saw your silhouette and we thought, your weapons are still active." De Hyan interrupted, his tone not changing at all. "Power them down. Now, this is your only warning." Rael looked at his tactical officer, who gave a tiny, fearful shake of his head. Their weapons were online, but barely. To power them down now was to become completely helpless. What if this was a trick? What if they boarded and took the data spheres? His mind, trained in betrayal and double deals, could not accept the simple, direct command. "We need assurances, Captain. We are a damaged vessel." "We request," he never finished. The sensor officer screamed. "New contacts. Multiple warp signatures. All around us." Rael's head snapped to the main viewer. Space around his 3 ships was rippling, tearing open. Not with the violent, messy tears of his own chump, but with precise, sharp flashes of light. Vessels emerged. 1, 5, 10, 20. They were like the first ship, but different. They were not white and elegant. They were gray, matte, and angular. They had no visible markings. They moved into formation with a silent, choreographed precision that made his blood run cold. They encircled his small group completely. Their weapon ports were small, like the first ships, but now there were dozens of them, all pointed inward. Mother of the Void. His first officer breathed. The human captain's face was still on the screen. "You have refused a direct order," De Hyan said. It sounded like a simple statement of fact. "Containment protocol is authorized." Rael found his voice. A panicked shriek. "Wait, we surrender. We power down." It was too late. The human ships did not fire in a volley. There was no barrage of missiles, no torrent of plasma. What happened next was not an attack. It was a dissection. Thin, brilliant beams of blue-white light lanced out from the gray ships. They did not strike the hulls of the Kelthari ships. They struck specific points: weapon emplacements, shield projectors, engine nozzles, communication arrays. Each beam lasted a fraction of a second. Each hit was accompanied by a small, silent explosion of sparks and molten metal. On the Prophet's blade, the world dissolved into chaos and darkness. Rael was thrown from his chair as a beam snipped off their main plasma cannon like a gardener pruning a dead branch. The lights died. The hum of the engine stuttered and went silent. The main viewer fizzed and went black. The only light came from the emergency strips on the floor and the burning holes in his own ship's hull, through which he could see the cold gray shapes of the human fleet. Holding position, his ship was dead in the water. No weapons. No drive. No comms. Not destroyed, just neutralized. On the bridge of the Steadfast, De Hyan watched the operation on his tactical display. The gray Sentinel ships worked with machine-like efficiency. In less than 2 minutes, the 3 Kelthari ships were transformed from wounded warriors to inert, floating scrap. He saw no life pods eject. The beams had avoided crew compartments and life support with terrifying accuracy. Subin, his pilot, let out a shaky breath. They didn't kill anyone. No, Daehyun said. His own heart was pounding. He had never seen such a display of power, so carefully used. It was more intimidating than any wild barrage. They didn't need to. A new signal arrived, text only, from the lead Sentinel vessel. Hostiles neutralized. Nitrogen monoxide casualties. Your orders, flagship? Daehyun thought. The immediate threat was gone. But a message had to be sent. A lesson had to be taught, not just to these 3 ships, but to anyone who might be listening. Sentinel Group, he said, opening a channel. Detach 1 tender. Provide minimum emergency life support to the Kelthari crews. Stabilize their hulls so they do not break apart. Leave their transponders active. He paused, ensuring every word was clear. Then tow the vessels. Take them to the edge of the system, to the boundary of our sovereign space. Leave them there. Point them toward Kelthari territory. Cut them loose. On the dark, powerless bridge of the Prophet's Blade, Rael felt a new vibration through the deck. A different kind of hum. He stumbled to a cracked viewport. One of the smaller gray human ships had extended a magnetic tether, attaching it to his cruiser's scarred hull. Another did the same to his escorts. Slowly, without ceremony, the human fleet began to move, towing them like useless trash. They were being taken. Not as prisoners of war. Not as prizes. They were being taken out with the garbage out. The journey took hours. Rael sat in the dark with his crew, listening to the ragged breathing of the wounded. He saw the gas giant Jupiter slide past, majestic and uncaring. He saw the sun grow smaller. Finally, the towing stopped. The magnetic tethers disengaged with a loud clang that echoed through the dead ship. Through the viewport, Rael could see the gray human fleet pulling back, forming a solid wall between his ship and the inner solar system. The beautiful blue dot of Earth was nowhere in sight. A final, powerful signal washed over them, on all bands, in the clear. It was the human captain's voice. Kelthari vessels. You have been disarmed for illegal aggression in human space. Your lives are spared. You have enough power for basic life support for 30 standard days. Your location and course have been broadcast to your nearest outpost. They will, we calculate, reach you in 28 days. The voice paused. You will deliver a message to your union and to the Terran Dominion and to anyone else who hears this. Earth declined to join your war. You brought it to our door. You fired the first shot. That was your only shot. The next time any vessel enters our space with hostile intent, it will not be disarmed. It will be erased. This is not a threat. It is a promise. The war stays out there. Our garden is closed. The communication ended. The wall of gray ships turned, as one, and shot back toward the inner system, moving faster than any ship Rael had ever seen. In moments, they were gone. Rael was left staring into the empty dark, his 3 ships crippled and silent, adrift between the stars. He was alive. But as he pictured the calm, cold face of the human captain and the surgical beams of light, he understood, with a sinking, awful certainty, that he had just made the biggest mistake in the history of the Kelthari Union. He had not started a war with the humans. He had woken them up. The emergency beacon from the Steadfast was not a sound, but a pulse of raw data. It shot through the silent vacuum, a scream of ones and zeros. It traveled at the speed of light for just over a second before it hit the antennas of the lunar relay station, in the quiet observation room. The alert was a physical shock. A siren, low and urgent, blared to life. Jingwu's console lit up with flashing crimson symbols he had only ever seen in training simulations. His heart jumped into his throat. Priority Alpha. He shouted, his voice cracking. From the Steadfast. Myra was at his side in an instant. Together, they opened the data stream. First came the simple, terrible text. Steadfast attacked. Unprovoked. First shot fired. We are engaged. Then, the sensor logs flooded in. They saw the Kelthari ships spill out of warp, damaged and dark. They saw the Steadfast approach, its shields up, but its weapons cold. They saw the clear, unmistakable energy spike from the lead cruiser. They saw the single lance of plasma tear across space. They saw it strike the Steadfast, and they saw the bloom of fire and debris from the engine NAC ELLE. Mira put a hand over her mouth. They shot him. They just shot him. Jingwu's hands flew over his console. His training took over, pushing down the cold fear. Confirming receipt. Relaying to Earth Central Command. Full sensor package, no filter. He sent it. The entire ugly truth hurled toward Earth. On the screen, the silent war map of a distant galaxy was forgotten. Now, there was only one flashing red icon in their own solar system. Their home system. A place where war was not allowed to exist. The council chamber in Geneva was a place of calm light and warm wood. It was designed for discussion, for philosophy. Not for this. The 12 counselors, leaders of Earth's unified government, received the Priority Alpha packet in the middle of a routine session about deep-sea ecology. The senior counselor, an older woman named Yoonji, watched the playback on the central holodisplay. The room was utterly silent as they saw the Steadfast, one of their own, be struck. They saw the damage. They heard the automated distress call in the background of the logs. When it finished, the silence deepened. It was a heavy, different kind of quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet before a storm. A counselor from the Pacific Zone was the first to speak, his voice trembling with anger. This is an act of war, a direct attack in our sovereign space. Another, from the European sector, looked pale. We must be cautious. They were damaged. It could have been a mistake. A misfire from a dying ship. Yoonji did not speak right away. She stared at the frozen image, the Kelthari weapon firing, the human ship wounded. She thought of Captain De Hyen, whom she had met once. A serious man, proud of his peaceful duty. She thought of the garden outside the chamber window, and of every garden on Earth. A misfire does not target a ship's engines, she said, her voice low and clear. A mistake does not happen after a ship has moved to offer aid. They saw him. They aimed. They fired. She looked around the room, her gaze settling on each counselor. For 70 years, our policy has been a shield. We believed if we were no threat, we would receive no threat. We were wrong. Our shield was seen as an empty space, an invitation. She stood up. The first shot has been fired. Not in their war, in ours. The only question now is the nature of our reply. The debate was short. The fear of escalation was weighed against the cold, simple fact on the screen. The principle had been broken. If they did nothing, the lesson for the galaxy would be clear. You could shoot an Earth ship in Earth, would simply send another polite message. EUNG finally raised her hand. The vote was called. It was unanimous. Activate the Sentinel protocols, Yoonji said. The words were simple, but in that room, they felt like the turning of a giant. Ancient key. Across Earth and across the solar system, lights began to come on dot in the great shipyards orbiting Mars, where engineers built probes and colony ships. Armored panels slid back. Dry docks that had held peaceful vessels were flooded with light and activity. From hidden cradles within asteroid bases, sleek, gray shapes began to power up. These were not the elegant, white ships of the patrol fleet. These were something else. They had no names, only numbers. They were not built for showing the flag. They were built for a single purpose: absolute defense. On Earth, in quiet facilities buried under mountains or deep beneath the oceans, screens lit up. Teams of operators, who had trained for decades for a day everyone hoped would never come, took their stations. They were the best pilots, the sharpest tacticians, people who had mastered war as a theoretical science, never dreaming they would practice it. A new signal went out from Earth, not a plea or a protest, but a summons. A summons to every one of these hidden ships, to every one of these dormant soldiers. On the damaged bridge of the Steadfast, Captain De Hayan watched his screens. His ship was holding together, but it was hurt. The Kelthari had not fired again. They seemed just as stunned as he had been. He could see them on his sensors, drifting, their own energy signatures flaring in confusion. His communications officer looked up. "Captain, we are receiving a new priority signal. From Earth Central. It's a fleet-wide activation code." Daehan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damaged life support. He knew the code. Every captain did. It was the code that unlocked the sealed sections of their tactical databases. It was the code that changed their mission parameters from observe and report to something else entirely. "Put it on my screen," he said. The message was text only, from Senior Counselor Yoon-ji herself. It was brief. "Captain De Hayan, the first shot has been fired. Your restraint is noted and honored. The Steadfast is now flagship of Solar Sentinel Group Alpha. You have tactical command. Reinforcements are en route. Your new orders: contain the hostile elements. Prevent any further aggression. Use force necessary to neutralize the threat to Earth. The galaxy is watching. Show them what non-intervention means when our home is touched." De Hayan read the words twice. He looked at the smoking wound in his ship. He looked at the faces of his crew, scared but trying to be brave. They were scientists and explorers. Now they were soldiers. He took a slow breath. The confusion and the fury inside him cooled into a single, hard point of focus. "Acknowledge the orders," he said to his comms officer. His voice was different now. It was the voice of a man who had just been given permission to defend his home. "Tell command. Message received. Threat will be contained." He turned to his tactical station. The young officer there looked at him, wide-eyed. "Sir, our weapons are only point defense. We can't fight a cruiser." Daehan allowed himself a small, cold smile. It did not reach his eyes. "We are not going to fight them," he said. "We are going to wait. Help is coming." And on his long-range sensors, new icons began to appear. Dozens of them, emerging from behind moons, from the dark side of asteroids, from the direction of Mars. They moved with a silent, terrifying speed. They were not painted white. They were the gray of unpolished steel, the color of a sharp knife. The garden had just grown teeth. The Kelthari cruiser Prophet's blade shook like a dying animal. Commander Rail, his four hands gripping the sides of his command chair, felt each shudder deep in his bones. The air smelled of burned wiring and fear. On his main screen, the battle was a disaster of flashing red symbols. Terran warships, blocky and brutal, had ambushed their supply convoy at the jump point. The Kelthari were traitors, fighters only when the Prophet was good, and today there was no Prophet. Only survival. Report. Rail barked, his voice rough. "Shields at 20%, his tactical officer said, one of his eyes swollen shut from a console explosion. "Engine 3 is gone. The Starlight Merchant and the Swift Deal are gone. We are the last." Rail cursed. They had to run. The data spheres they carried, stolen Terran battle plans, were worthless if they were dead. Navigation. Plot a blind jump, now. Anywhere away from here. Sir, the drive is damaged. A blind jump is due it. Rail screamed. He could see the Terran capital ship turning its heavy guns toward them. It was a choice between maybe dying in the jump and definitely dying here. The young navigation officer, his hands trembling, punched in the emergency commands. The jump equations were messy, based on fragmented star charts and guesswork. The warp drive whined, a sound of metal tearing itself apart. The ship vibrated so hard Rail thought the viewport would crack. Then, with a lurch that made everyone's stomachs drop, the Prophet's Blade and its 2 remaining escort ships vanished from the Benix's system. Space tore open not far from the icy rocks of the Sol System's asteroid belt. It was not a clean arrival. The 3 Kelthari ships spilled out of the warp point like wounded birds, trailing plasma and debris. Alarms howled on the Prophet's Blade's bridge. Lights flickered. Rail pulled himself up, his head ringing. Location. Where are we? The navigation officer stared at his broken screens. Unknown. The jump was messy. I am reading a single yellow star, spectral class G2, 1 gas giant with rings. Many small rocky bodies. He looked up, his face pale under his greenish skin. It matches an old entry. A system marked Observe Only, Non-Interventionist, sir. I think we are in the human system. A cold chill went through Rail. The humans. The quiet ones. The gardeners. Their system was supposed to be a backwater, a place to avoid because they asked no questions and offered no trade. A safe place to hide, perhaps. Silence all non-essential systems, Rail ordered, his voice a whisper now. Run dark. Let's see if anyone noticed us. On the bridge of the EDF Steadfast, the sudden warp signature was like a thunderclap in a silent library. Captain De Hyan was reviewing crew reports when the alert screamed, Captain! Unscheduled warp rupture at extreme sensor range, bearing 321 near the belt's edge. Subin said, her voice sharp. De Hyan was on his feet in a second. Identification? The sensor officer, a young man named Taman, worked his console. 3 vessels. Configuration is not Terran. Signatures match? Kelthari Union profiles. Medium cruiser class with 2 light escort. They are heavily damaged. Emissions are erratic. A Kelthari battle group. Here. Dehyan's mind raced. It was a clear violation of space, but they were hurt. Maybe they were lost. The protocol for unknown, damaged vessels was clear. Observe. Hail. Offer medical assistance if needed, but escort them out of the system. Do not engage. Move to an intercept course, but keep a safe distance. Power up defensive shields only. Open a channel on the standard galactic band. On the Prophet's Blade, a new alarm pinged. Commander. A contact. Approaching from the inner system. It's a ship. Rail's heart hammered. A Terran trap? Had they followed? Show me. The image appeared on screen. The ship was unlike anything Rail had seen in the war. It was smooth, elegant, and white, with clean lines. It looked more like a piece of art than a warship. It had no visible heavy guns, only small, precise emplacements. What is that? A civilian vessel? Rail asked, hope flaring. His tactical officer was studying the energy readings. No, sir. Its power signature is very advanced and concentrated. It is running strong shields, but its weapon ports are small. It is hailing us. A human ship. It had to be. Rail felt a wave of relief. The pacifists. They would help. They would give them aid, and his people could get repairs and leave. He could spin a story about being explorers, attacked by pirates. But then his tactical officer spoke again, his voice tight with a new fear. "Sir, I am recalibrating. That ship's design, its silhouette from this angle, it loosely matches a new class of Terran fast scout we have in the database. The Terran have been experimenting with new hull designs." Rail froze. The hope turned to ice in his gut. A Terran scout? Here, waiting for them? It made a terrible sense. The Terran were cunning. They would ambush them even here, in a neutral system, using a ship designed to trick them. He looked at his main screen. The human ship, or what he believed was a Terran trick, was moving closer, a clean, menacing shape against the stars. On his own ship, people were bleeding. His engines were dying. He was trapped. "They found us," he breathed, the paranoia of the recent battle swallowing his reason. He saw not a rescuer, but the finisher of a trap. His first officer, a more cautious Kelthari, started to say, "Commander, the hail we should answer." But Rail was not listening. He saw the Terran capital ship's guns turning toward him again. He saw his dead crew on the Starlight Merchant. He acted not as a commander, but as a cornered animal. "They will not take us. Not after all this. All forward batteries. Target that scout. Lock on. Commander, their shields are strong. We should—" The tactical officer tried. "Fire!" Rail screamed, his voice cracking with fear and rage. On the Steadfast, Daehayan was about to repeat his hail. "This is Captain Daehayan of the Earth Defense Force vessel Steadfast. You have entered restricted space. Do you require—" The sensor officer cut him off. "Captain, massive energy spike from the lead cruiser. They are targeting us." It was impossible. It made no sense. For a single frozen second, Daehayan could not process it. They were hurt. He was here to help. Why would they? Evasive. Full power to forward shields. The words tore from his throat. It was too late. From the scarred underbelly of the Prophet's blade, a searing lance of green plasma fired. It was not a full volley. The ship was too damaged for that. But it was one focused, panic-driven shot. It crossed the space between them in a heartbeat. The Steadfast shuddered violently. The lights died for a second, replaced by the spinning red glow of emergency strobes. A deafening crash of metal echoed through the hull. Alm screamed. Daehayan was thrown hard against his chair's restraints. "Report!" He yelled over the noise. Subin's voice was strained. "Direct hit. Portside engine nacelle. We have a hull breach. Containment fields are holding, but the drive is down. We are on emergency power." The ship groaned around them. The quiet was gone, replaced by the sounds of damage and pain. Daehayan looked at his main screen. The view from an external camera showed a jagged, smoking wound in his ship's smooth side. His beautiful, peaceful ship. A cold, calm fury settled over him, washing away the shock. He looked at the alien cruiser on the screen. He had seen the flash of its weapon. He had felt the blow. The first shot had been fired. Not in a distant war. Here, in his home. Against his ship. The principle that had guided Earth for generations was now just vapor and debris floating around his wounded vessel. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the chaos on the bridge. "All hands, battle stations. Signal lunar relay. No, signal Earth Council directly. Use priority Alpha protocol." He paused, his eyes locked on the Kelthari ship. Message reads, "Steadfast attacked. Unprovoked. First shot fired. We are engaged." The big screen in the lunar relay station showed a silent war. From his chair, Xingwu watched fleets of tiny lights move and clash. A green light meant a ship from the Terran Dominion. A blue light was a ship from the Kelthari Union. A bright flash meant a ship was gone. It was all very clean, very quiet, and very far away. Another big fight in the Benexus system, Jinwoo said. His voice was flat. The Kelthari lost 3 more cruisers. Myra looked up from her own screen. She was studying the latest message from the Terran. They are asking for our help again. More pleading. More promises. They say the Kelthari are using weapons that break galactic law. Jinwoo just shook his head. Earth did not get involved. That was the first rule, the only rule that mattered now. 70 years ago, when the first alien ship drifted into the solar system, everything changed. But not in the way old stories said it would. There was no big war, no grand alliance. Instead, humanity looked at the stars, saw the constant fighting, and decided to stay home. They built a world without hunger, without pollution. They became gardeners, artists, and thinkers. Their few ships were for looking, not for fighting. The door to the observation room opened, and Captain Dae-Hyan walked in. He was not a tall man, but he stood very straight. His uniform was simple, dark blue, without many medals. The Earth Defense Force did not give out many medals. Any change in their position? Dae-Hyan asked. He was on a short stop at the station before heading back to his ship. No, Captain, Jinwoo said. The Terran are losing ground. They are getting desperate. The Kelthari are pushing forward. They are getting confident. Dae-Hyan walked to the big window. Below, the gray dust of the moon stretched out. Beyond it, a beautiful blue and white marble hung in the blackness. Home. It looked so peaceful. And our answer? Mira answered this time. The Council sent the same message an hour ago. The people of Earth thank you for your communication. We maintain our policy of peaceful non-intervention. We urge both parties to seek a diplomatic solution. She almost had the words memorized. A soft beep came from Jinwoo's console. A new message, marked with the symbol of the Terran Dominion, was coming in live. It's Ambassador Krell, Jinwoo said. He is requesting a direct link, again. Dae-Hyan gave a small nod. Put him on. Let's hear it. The image of Ambassador Krell appeared on the main screen. He was not human. His skin was a rough, gray texture, and his eyes were large and black. He looked tired. Behind him, his room on the Terran ship was messy with screens and maps. Friends of Earth, Krell began, his voice translated by the computer. It sounded scratchy and sad. I beg you, look at the data we have sent. The Kelthari are not just warriors. They are destroyers of worlds. They strip planets bare. They sell the people. If they win this war, their next target could be you. Your garden world would be a great prize for them. Please, we do not ask for your soldiers. We ask for your technology, your shield systems, your medical knowledge, anything to help us protect our people. The 3 humans listened. They had heard versions of this speech many times. Jinwoo felt a pang of sympathy. The data was real. The Kelthari were harsh. But the Terran were not innocent either. Their history was full of conquest. Your request has been received, Ambassador, Jinwoo said, his voice polite but empty of real feeling. It will be passed again to the Earth Council. Our policy, however, remains unchanged. We cannot take a side. Krell's large eyes seemed to get even darker. Your policy is a coward's dream. You hide behind your perfect world while the galaxy burns. Do you think your peace will protect you when the fire comes to your door? The words hung in the quiet room. Dae-Hyan's face hardened. He stepped closer to the screen. Ambassador Krell, he said, his voice calm but firm. No fire has come to our door. You are asking us to leave our home, walk into your burning house, and fight your fight. We decline. Earth declines. The communication is over. He nodded at Jinwoo, who cut the link. The screen went back to the silent map of flashing lights. He is angry, Mira said softly. He is losing, Daehyun corrected. There is a difference. He turned away from the screen. My ship is ready. We are starting our patrol of the outer belt. 6 weeks of quiet, I hope. Jinwoo smiled a little. Watch the pretty asteroids, Captain. Daehyun almost smiled back. That's the plan? You too watch the war. Try not to get any on you. He gave a short bow of his head and left the room. The quiet came back. Jinwoo and Mira worked for a few more hours, tracking ship movements, listening to coded signals they couldn't break, doing the job of witnesses to a fight they wanted no part of. Later, during a quiet moment, Myra looked at Earth on the screen. Do you ever think? What if he's right? She asked. What if the fire does come here? Jinwoo leaned back in his chair. He thought about his small apartment in Seoul, with its window box of real flowers. He thought about the quiet streets, the universities full of students studying philosophy and music, the great ocean farms. He thought of the simple, good life they had built. If the fire comes, he said slowly, it will be because someone was stupid enough to light it. We are not putting it out in someone else's house. Our job is to make sure no spark ever reaches our garden. That's what the patrols are for. That's what the policy is for. To make the idea of attacking us seem unthinkable. Mira was not fully convinced. The galaxy is full of unthinkable things happening every day. Then we will be the one quiet place, Jinwoo said. He believed it. He had to believe it. On the main screen, a cluster of blue lights surrounded a single green light. The green light flashed brightly, then went dark. Another Terran ship was gone. The blue lights moved on not far away. On the bridge of the EDF Steadfast, Captain Daehyun watched the stars. His ship was new and fast, built for watching and for showing the flag. It had strong shields and a few light guns, meant only for defense. He had a crew of 50, the best of their training classes. They were engineers, pilots, and scientists. They were not soldiers. He looked at his navigation screen. The patrol route was a long, lazy circle past the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn, out to the dark, cold places where the solar system ended. It was empty space. Peaceful space. All systems are green, Captain, his pilot, Subin, said. Ready to leave lunar orbit. Take us out, slow and steady, Daehyun said. The Steadfast moved away from the moon, a sleek silver fish swimming into the deep black sea. Behind it, Earth shone, a lonely jewel of blue and green. Ahead, there was only the quiet dark and the distant, faint flashes of a war that was not theirs. Daehyun sat in his command chair. He thought about Ambassador Krell's angry face. He thought about the Council's calm, repeated no. He was a man who followed orders. He believed in the garden. His job was to walk the fence and make sure nothing got in. He watched the last of the moon's light fade from the viewport. Soon, there were only stars. Somewhere out there, two empires were tearing each other apart. But here, there was only the soft hum of his ship's engine, and a silence so deep it felt solid. It was a good silence, he told himself. It was the sound of peace. It was the sound of a choice they had all made. He would protect that silence with everything he had. He did not know that the silence was about to break.